Good evening. I'm Abby Phillip in New York. Let's get right to what America is talking about. Wray wrapping up. Tonight, the FBI Director Christopher Wray is telling the 35,000 men and women of the Bureau that he is quitting.
After weeks of careful thought, I've decided the right thing for the Bureau is for me to serve until the end of the current administration in January and then step down. My goal is to keep the focus on our mission, on the indispensable work each of you is doing every single day. And in my view, this is the best way to avoid dragging the Bureau deeper into the fray while reinforcing the values and principles that are so important in how we do our work.
His exit paves the way for the president-elect to pass America's top law enforcement job to his loyalist, Kash Patel, something that Donald Trump says will end what he says is the weaponization of government, which isn't that ironic, don't you think? I mean, especially because Kash Patel, he's literally published an enemies list right here of the people in the so-called deep state who he believes should be prosecuted. Joining us in our fifth seat is Scott Curtis. He's the former FBI agent. Scott, what do you make of the fact that Christopher Wray actually capitulated so early on in this process and gave up this chair to Kash Patel, essentially?
Well, I think it would have been difficult for him to continue there just for optics' sake there, because the FBI had been involved to some degree in some of these investigations of former President Trump here. So the level of trust between the White House and the FBI would have been shaky at best there. So I think Mr. Wray was doing the right thing in having a clean slate, like he mentioned there, and having a fresh director come in there and take the reins going forward.
Yeah, and so tell us about, I mean, what is the sense inside the FBI among the people you're talking to about what this all means for them to have Kash Patel come on in?
With him specifically, I don't know, but I know that morale in the Bureau is low, and I know that recent polling has shown that the American public's trust in the FBI is at its lowest level in years there. So I think there needs to be some level of reform and self-reflection within the organization there. And I think a lot of what the Bureau should be doing going forward there is to maybe decentralize a lot of what has been going on the last several years and put more of the autonomy back into the field offices and the case agents that are running these investigations as opposed to micromanaging them from Washington, D.C.
I want to come back to that in a second, but Geraldo, I mean, the idea that Kash Patel would be the one to reform the FBI, given that, according to a lot of other people who have commented on this, a lot of them don't think that he has the qualifications just sort of in the sort of nuts and bolts of the organization to do the job, but also because, as I mentioned, I mean, he has a list of people that he said he wants to go after, which seems like not the definition of the job.
I don't know a lot about Kash Patel. I've never met him as far as I know. All I know is that he seems to me, from what I read and what I see and hear, is that he's part of the, if not the chairman of, the lunatic wing, the Steve Bannon, Alex Jones wing of the MAGA movement. Throw Matt Gaetz in there, if you will. But Kash Patel, if you're looking for an objective, professional, resurrector, savior of the FBI, you better not hold your breath waiting for Kash Patel to deliver. I think the one thing that Scott said that I think is very important is that he mentioned how the FBI got too political. That is true. That wasn't Trump. That was James Comey before it was
Chris Wray.
Chris Wray. But James Comey mucked up Hillary Clinton's electoral run, and he went after the president, President Trump, in his first term. That in 2017, President Trump could not. He was like he stepped in dog crap, and he just couldn't get rid of James Comey. He hounded him. Another canine metaphor, I think the FBI needs a cleansing, and I think Christopher Wray was heroic in stepping down. But I also think that the Bureau does need some profound introspection.
Heroic in stepping down.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, are you going to wait for Donald Trump to come in and be humiliated and be fired if you're Chris Wray? No. I mean, he absolutely had to do it this way. As for Kash Patel, I mean, Trump thinks he's going to end the growing crime epidemic, dismantle criminal gangs, stop human and drug trafficking. He also, though, has said that he's going to get rid of all the conspirators who he calls journalists, who were part and parcel to the 2020 election and reporting on what were the facts that Biden won and Trump lost. So that list I would take very seriously.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing, this weekend he gave this interview on NBC, and here's what he was saying about the January 6th committee members who he's been targeting with these kinds of comments for a while now. Listen.
For what they did,
Yeah.
honestly, they should go to jail.
So you think Liz Cheney should go to jail?
For what they did.
Everyone on the committee, you think
I think
should go to
everybody
jail?
anybody that voted in favor.
Are you going to direct your FBI director and your attorney general to send them to jail?
No, not at all. I think that they'll have to look at that, but I'm not going to. I'm going to focus on drill, baby, drill.
It's a classic Trump turn. No, not at all. I'm not going to direct him, but I think they'll have to look at that.
He just did, right? I mean, that's what Trump does. He basically just directed them to do exactly what he said he didn't direct them to do. I'm going to disagree with my friends across the table here, actually. Surprisingly, Gretchen and I don't disagree on much, but we do disagree on this. I don't think he should have resigned, because the reason Trump gave for his resignation, the reason that he said that Wray had to go, was because Wray raided his beautiful home, or I forgot how he termed Mar-a-Lago, but Wray went and violated the sanctity of his home. Well, the FBI did that after requesting that Donald Trump return classified documents over and over and over again, and Trump didn't. So by resigning, effectively, what he did was he said, implied in some ways, that Trump was right, that he did something wrong. I would have stood there and said, Mr. President, if you want to fire me for doing my job, and the job that federal agents had to do because you would not do yours and return these documents, then that's your prerogative. You can fire me, but I'm not leaving, because that looks like I did something wrong, and I didn't.
It's possible, as David French, I think, argued in the New York Times today, that this move is purely strategic and not at all on moral principle, because if he resigns now, then Trump requires Senate confirmation to get his pick in. So it could be purely strategic. We don't know. But I want to bring it back to the enemies list you held up a few times already. One of the people on his enemies list is the famous radical left nut job, Bill Barr. Okay? So Bill Barr is someone that is too extreme for Kash Patel, and Kash Patel considers a part of the enemy deep state.
And Bill Barr, glad you brought it up, remember, said when he was in the Trump administration, that Kash Patel would serve as his deputy director over his dead body. So this is someone who knows his qualifications and thinks not very much.
But it's so ironic, Abby, because the revolution always eats its own, right? Bill Barr, who was an extreme attorney general and covered for Trump over and over and over and over again in the first term, now the revolution is eating its own, right? This is like the French Revolution, where the people guillotining people are now guillotining themselves. And that's exactly what's going on here. I mean, when Bill Barr becomes too much of a rhino for somebody like Donald Trump, then that means eventually Kash Patel will be too much of a rhino, because it's never enough.
Let me just play what Kash Patel has said lately about what he is going to do if he takes control of the FBI.
We look forward to a very smooth transition, and I'll be ready to go on day one. The senators have been wonderful, and I look forward to earning their trust and confidence through the advice and consent process and restoring law and order and integrity of the FBI.
And shut down the FBI Hoover building on day one and reopening the next day as a museum of the deep state.
We're going to come after the people in the media who lied about American citizens, who helped Joe Biden rig presidential elections. We're going to come after you. Whether it's criminally or civilly, we'll figure that out. But yeah, we're putting you all on notice.
I mean, I don't want you to speak for the thousands and thousands of people in the FBI, but I mean, if you hear that and you're sitting in the FBI's Hoover building, what are you thinking?
Well, first of all, I don't think we should assume that he's going to get through the nomination process. He's obviously going to have a lot of questions that he's going to have to answer by a lot of people here for those past statements here. But again, I think what's important here is to get the spotlight away from the FBI director and away from Washington, D.C., and put it back out into the field where FBI agents feel they have the autonomy to do what they're supposed to do in identifying threats and investigating the threats to the American public here.
Can I ask you about that? I mean, what kinds of investigations are FBI agents feeling like they cannot pursue right now?
I think there's a great hesitancy of taking any investigative step because they feel like they have somebody looking over their shoulder and that they need to get directive from this whole chain of command going all the way back to Washington, D.C. Whereas back the way I ran an investigation is I made the decisions about what was appropriate for my investigation at that time. And if I needed support, resources, or whatever from Washington, D.C., I would request it.
Do you think that would change under a Trump administration and a Kash Patel?
I would hope that it would. I would hope, again, that things are decentralized,
but that's what Kash Patel wants also. He wants to take the 7,000 FBI agents in the Hoover building, and he said, you're cops, get out there and be cops. So, I mean, obviously you're different packaging.
But he's going to tell them what to do. That's the problem.
I think that this is the tension here is that, I mean, if that it may be true that Kash Patel wants to give, the field offices, autonomy, but he also has a pretty long laundry list of things that he, it seems, wants to direct those very same people to investigate.
Yeah, and I don't think that's appropriate. It needs to be a two-way street. The field offices need to be communicating back about what the threats are in their area of responsibility and prioritizing those threats and determining, the resources that are needed for those. There is a lot of waste in FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. I think some of that can be disseminated to the field there to give them additional manpower and resources there to address what needs to get addressed in those areas.
All right, we do have to head out from here, but Scott Curtis, thank you very much for joining us.